Hi, my name's Georgia,
And my name's Indy.
and today we're here with Miss Kerri Sherk, who is our first guest on our new speaker series where we're going to be hearing from experts. And today we're going to be hearing from a dietitian, and she works at the fitness firm where her focus is on teaching people about the importance of nutritious food and healthy eating and why it's so important for our physical and mental well-being. And that really ties into Bank on Belly's mission and values as one of our primary focuses is the importance of making sure that everyone has access to healthy and nutritious food all year long. But we really want to make sure that everybody understands why it's so important to make sure that there's equal access for healthy and nutritious food and how that can impact people's lives if they don't have access to healthy and nutritious food that can fuel their body. So thank you so much for joining us today to speak with us and share all of your knowledge and expertise.
It's a pleasure. I'm honored that you guys would come in and speak to me today and ask me some questions about the importance of nutritious food and healthy plates and so on. So ask away.
Yes.
So I think where we want to start with your journey, kind of where you've gotten today, is kind of where you've come from kind of like our age and what drew you to kind of nutrition and helping other people and making sure nutritious food is such an important part of life.
When I was your age, so back in university, I no, it was even before that, actually. Of course, it was much before that. It would have been I think my first intersection with food was when my sister was diagnosed with diabetes, and that was when I was before I was a teenager, so it was maybe 12 or 13, and our diet changed as a result of that. And my sister was, she was instructed and encouraged to test her blood sugars, and she was taking, insulin shots 4 times a day. And this really sparked an interest in me on how nutrition can have such an impact on our body. And we started using the diabetic counting for food groups and so on. And then our diet changed again when my father was diagnosed with some high cholesterol. So that was back in the 80s as well, maybe the early 90s. So all of these sort of changes in our diet as a family made me more interested in food. And then I chose nutritional sciences at McGill University, and then went on further to become a dietitian. So at McGill University, they have a great program where your internship is integrated into the program. So this was an excellent program for me to attend and choose. So off to Montreal I went, and then I graduated from McGill University, and at the time I was dating a gentleman who lived in Aldershot in Burlington, and we opened this facility, this fitness center, and I've been here ever since. So it was a real gift, actually, to have this opportunity to have my own private practice. I wasn't super keen on working in the hospital, so I I love that I get the opportunity to work with clients who make the choice to come and see me in here to uh, improve their nutritional intake, to improve uh, their um, their whole lifestyle. Because here we look not only on nutrition, but we also look at physical activity and stress management. So we sort of look at all three of those. And I get to work with clients who, like I said, have made that choice to come in and improve their lifestyle through nutrition, particularly.
That's awesome. So yeah, I don't know if we want to get into questions now. Um, so kind of the first question we have for you is why does food that you eat have such a big impact on your mental health and well-being? Like what do you see as like the greatest factor?
The studies have been done and shown that children perform much better in school when they've had breakfast. Uh, when we don't eat, our brain doesn't function as well. Our brain uses primarily glucose as its method of fuel. And so it's important that we have, particularly children, um, adults can get away with a little bit more because they have a few more fat stores. But the children do need a breakfast for sure to get that glucose into their system, um, as well as incorporating a meal that would have some protein sources as well as some fiber, and then of course some dairy as well. So having that well balanced breakfast is particularly good for your physical health, and your mental health. So we know for sure that that helps children, with their cognitive function. Um, for the average individual who is, a teenager or an adult, you want to choose all foods from all food groups, because my philosophy is that most foods fit. We used to say all foods fit, but there's such a plethora of foods available, and a lot of them are unhealthy, that all foods don't necessarily fit. I would say most foods fit, and particularly colorful vegetables and fruits would be the priority. Um, so from there, you would create yourself balanced plates that have proteins, lean proteins, whole grains, vegetables and fruits, and then some healthy fats to sort of top it off. You're looking at more of a balanced intake there of all macronutrients, and that is going to support you physically and mentally from the AM all the way to the PM on a daily basis, provided that you are providing or eating 3 to 4 meal times per day. So it is sort of a sustained intake of calories over the day. When we miss a meal, we can tend to underperform physically and mentally. So it is important that we get those calories, every 3 to 4 hours. Hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really important to understand that when understanding food insecurity, and just how being food insecure and also the potential of, or the likelihood that you have a low income really correlates, as you're likely going to be missing meals, and many families don't know when their next meal is coming or where it's coming from. So just understanding that skipping that meal can cause them to underperform and might keep them in a poverty well that makes it very difficult to get out of, as they might not be able to perform very well in school as they're hungry. And obviously, if you're hungry, it's very difficult to concentrate. And as you mentioned, you're not going to be at your top physical or mental state. So that was really, I think, valuable information that you just shared for people to understand. And kind of spinning off that question as well, a lot of food banks receive an influx of non-perishable donations, which is great. But sometimes, and most often, it's really high in sodium and very high in sugar. And I was just wondering if maybe you'd be able to shed some light on the negative impacts that foods so high in sodium and sugar could have on the body if eating them so consistently.
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is one of the main issues with food banks, is that there's no perishable items there. And when there's less perishable items, we're losing out on all fresh fruits and vegetables. However, that doesn't mean that, that limits all of our good, healthy food choices, because we still can get good, healthy food choices, even though they might be canned. So with canned foods or preserved foods, we are going to get some sodium. Okay, so that's somewhat a given, or a sugar, because this is how we preserve our foods. Having said that, there are some food items that are available that don't necessarily need the sodium or the sugar to be preserved, and I'll bookmark that into a later question. But the impact of sugar and sodium can be deleterious to any individual, because if you are eating a large amount of sodium, it can lead to, heart conditions, or the pre-existing conditions that can lead to heart conditions, for example, high blood pressure. Sugar is a lot of calories, if you're eating a ton and ton of sugar from preserved foods, things like packaged granola bars or cookies or cakes, which are all preserved and can be found at food banks, then, and this is not really just about food banks, this is for kids in general today, because unhealthy foods are everywhere, ubiquitous. And they're very available, right at our fingertips, because we can order something online and it can arrive to us within 5 minutes, sadly, just through a delivery truck. Um, so we in general, kids and people are eating too much sugar, and this is putting on unwanted and undesired fat pounds. If we eat too much sugar, our body will resort to building fat stores. So this is leading to unhealthy individuals that are carrying around too much fat. And so two things need to happen. You need to cut back on your sugar, or you need to move more. So these are some of the effects, the sort of the deleterious effects that too much sugar is having. When we're talking about a family or individuals that are in a situation that are, they're going to food banks, or they're shopping for items that have a lower price tag, then what they need and what they might be looking for is education on the things that they need to be purchasing to help their family make better choices.
Yeah,
If that helps.
definitely. Thank
Yeah.
you. And I think that also helps. Oftentimes, I get the question of people that want to help, they're just not sure how they can help. Just understanding that you can help by ensuring that everybody has access to maybe educational sources, so that they can learn about healthy eating, but also access to healthy foods. So oftentimes food banks actually have lists of like items that they're specifically looking for.
Great.
So things like canned proteins, canned meats, as they are oftentimes getting non-perishables. Some food banks do have fresh food programs, which is also really amazing. But that's funded in different ways. Sometimes not
Okay.
necessarily always through donations, but like canned proteins, pasta, canned fruits and vegetables. But again, sometimes maybe just looking, like you said, for healthier options in those cases. So when donating canned soup, maybe a low sodium soup might be a better idea to look for.
Yes. Yeah, precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, low sodium soups would be, and they have low sodium options. Right, I should have mentioned that before. They have low sodium options of a lot of things now, that things can be purchased in those fashions, and then people will be getting in less sodium that way. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. And then you kind of already touched on this, but we were also just wanting to kind of pick your brain on what you think is most lacking today in the Canadian diet.
Okay. Vegetables and fruits, 100%. I would say more than half of the people that I meet are getting an insufficient amount of vegetables and fruits in their diet before we get started, which means that more than half of our population is eating insufficient amounts of vegetables and fruits. And I mean, they're not marketed, right? We see lots of pushes and promos for monster drinks and energy drinks and the next energy bar and protein bar and fast foods that are available on every corner. So there's lots of push and marketing for that, but there's very little for vegetables and fruits, and they're not as sexy, right? That's just the bottom line. However, there are ways to get vegetables and fruits in. It just takes a little bit of planning and preparation for that. But that would be what I see would be lacking in almost everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you said kind of the marketing aspect of it as well, because I feel like food banks and like having that nutritious food, maybe marketing is something kind of where that can bridge that gap. And that's kind of cool to see you seeing that gap, especially in your profession.
Yes.
So that was just
Yeah.
something I wanted to touch on, but like
Oh,
amazing.
thank you. Yeah.
And then the next question is definitely maybe a little redundant as well, but how do you see maybe income disparities kind of affecting that nutrition and that balanced meal that you're so focused on? And it doesn't have to be income disparities as well that you can touch on, but almost like rising costs in produce, rising costs in the average cereal box. How is that kind of,
Okay.
maybe you can shed light on that?
Sure. So what I would say is that there's a number of factors that limit people from accessing good, healthy food. This would be the cost of rising groceries across the board, particularly healthy food. So, healthy food, if you were to get a bunch of, if you were to fill your grocery cart with good lean meats and healthy fats and vegetables and fruits, your bill is likely going to come out a little bit more than if someone was to go through the grocery store and get all canned and boxed items and very little fresh things. The cost is a factor for sure, but I don't think it's that much of a factor that people should abstain fully from buying fresh food or healthy food. I think the bigger factor is the lack of education that people have, or the lack of knowledge that people have on what to do with that food. They don't know how to prepare it, or they don't have time. So then that would be the third one. They don't have the time. Their lives, if you are dealing with financial insecurity, then you're working a lot of hours and you don't know what your next day looks like. You don't have that time to come home and be grating carrots and cutting onions and peeling potatoes and putting it into a soup that you can sit and monitor for 2 hours. There's some real luxury to being able to make good, healthy, nutritious food. So cost is a factor, but so is time, and so is the knowledge of what to do with these things. And not only that, but it's the access and the lack of access. People who are living sort of in lower income areas don't have access to a fully equipped grocery store. Some of them are shopping at convenience stores, as well as transportation. They might not have the transportation that gets them to these grocery stores. Now, yes, in most places we have public transport, but not everybody wants to use public transport. So there's a number of factors that are limiting people from getting healthy food. Those are to name a few, but I would say that in most cases, it's just easier. It's easier to open up a box of cereal, pour some milk on it, and have that for dinner. And that's what some people are doing, but they're missing out on some major macronutrients and their waistline is expanding. And they're becoming unhealthy. So they might even, they might be low in things like iron, or they might be low on calcium, which is leading then to osteoporosis. Their intake of saturated fats are going to be high, thus increasing their risk of, other chronic diseases. So, the nutrients are also a really big factor that one needs to consider when planning this diet, or planning a balanced meal plan. And I think it is possible for people in low income areas or who have a low income to get these balanced plates, but it does start by being educated and wanting to know what to do, looking at the right, social media platforms for one thing, and associating yourselves with people who are wanting to cook, and learning those channels. So I think that that's possible. And at the food bank, I think it's possible too, because there are foods that, if people learn, like you said, there's lists available of recommended options that people can buy. If you follow those, you can have a well-stocked, well-balanced food bank available for these people. And it just, so then now it's up to the person who arrives there. Are they going to choose those things?
Definitely. Yeah, that's something again that Bank on Bellies has a big focus on, is making sure that donations are intentional, which is also again why we came to talk to you today, to kind of just share with everybody why it's so important that donations are intentional. Just because, as you said before, it is possible for individuals in low income communities to eat healthy if they have access to that healthy food. So by kind of listening to what food banks are asking for and helping them in that way, you're helping your neighbors, you're helping your community by listening to what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And also, something that's really great, one of the food banks that we work with is called Kerr Street Mission. And what they actually have is they have a fresh food market, as I mentioned before, and they get donations of like milk. Sometimes they have like fresh chicken, or it kind of just depends on what they're receiving at the time. But that, again, is like, as you were saying before, a luxury in some cases. Not all food banks have that. So there are even disparities there on where you can access these healthy foods. But that's also something that's becoming a lot more important, is ensuring that people have access to healthy foods.
Right.
So donations into those programs are also very valuable,
Mm-hmm.
because, as you said before, a canned fruit and vegetable is not the same as a fresh option, since it won't be so high in sodium, and you'd really be kind of ingesting, I guess, all of the nutrients available just from the fresh things. So that's also something really important, right?
Although that's a bit of a myth, though, because canned and frozen and fresh are still the vegetable.
Okay.
So you can get those nutrients right from a can of vegetables. There is more sodium. It's not going to be as fresh, but typically those things are either flash frozen if it's frozen, or if it's canned, you're still getting some of that fiber from that plant. So as long as you sort of drain the juice from that vegetable, you are getting some of those nutrients. An example might be beets. Like, there's a lot of nutrients in beets, and you're getting those in canned or jarred beets. So some of the foods that I would suggest, if you want me to carry on, would be things like jarred beets. You can donate jars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So jarred beets, jarred artichokes, incredible foods full of nutrients. Olives, canned or jars. These are really, really great part of the vegetable group. And then again, anything that's canned in terms of fruits can also contribute to your fiber. Fiber is something that I consider, it's a very important nutrient that we need to be getting about 35 grams of per day. So it and your vegetables and fruits are going to be a big proponent of that fiber intake. If you're omitting all vegetables and fruits, then you're relying solely on grains to get your fiber. And then, you might get some legumes or pulses. Nuts and seeds would be another option. And so nuts and seeds can also be available at the food bank. It's a more expensive item, but you can get, small containers of nuts and seeds as well. I would say that one of the most important things that one would look for at a food bank, or one would donate to a food bank, would be bags of legumes. So like kidney beans, navy beans, lentils, chickpeas. And I would have recipes, or I would have little cards that help people, give them instructions on how to soak those and then how to cook them, so that they know how to do that. Because with these, you're getting a boatload of nutrients, you're getting some protein, and you're getting some fiber. And these are wonderful, really good foods. So those would be, and then of course canned tomatoes. So diced tomatoes, whole tomatoes, tomato sauces, spaghetti sauces. These are all really great sources of food. Canned milks, evaporated milk, and even powdered milks. Tetra packs of things like milk alternatives for families who have children who can't digest lactose very well would also be, really helpful for those families. So just to name a few.
Honestly, that's really great to hear. Um, Everything that you just listed is actually on the most needed list at the food bank that we work with. So it's really just amazing to hear you say that and kind of help people, I think, understand better why food banks are asking for these items, as they might seem random to someone, but like canned tomato products, they are always looking for canned tomato
Yeah.
products because of like the nutritional intake that you can get from those. And beans, like they get donations of beans, and they're asking for these specific things. And I
it's
think
just as good to have them in the cans too.
yeah,
I wanted to mention that.
that's really
Like,
great to hear. One of our questions actually was, is there any myths that maybe people might have about nutrition, that maybe you would be able to counter? But I
in
think
general,
it's really great.
or about
Um,
particular foods.
Kind of just in general, but you kind of hit the nail on the head with that one, I guess, is just kind of
Oh,
understanding.
the canned versus the fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that by don't like listening to what the most needed food items are,
Mhm.
like you are still going to be helping people receive their nutritional intake.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Yeah, and I mean, people could even do things like, not necessarily supplements, but things like, a bag of wheat germ, small bags of flax seeds, small bags of hemp hearts. These are again like really kind of specialty items that could be, they'll probably last a day in a food bank. They would go really quickly. Um, and then of course, bags of pasta. And if you wanted, you could even do things like an alternative to the pasta, which would be like a rice pasta or a non-gluten pasta to help those families who are, have a celiac individual in their family. As far as myths, I mean, I from a from a healthy sort of perspective, what people read a lot of is that carbs are bad. Whereas in this place where you and I are speaking, carbs are the main source of nutrition in food banks and in the center of the grocery store, where, if you're not buying much fresh food, you're left with carbs and fat, right? You're getting some protein in things like, oh, and I forgot to add on sardines to that list. So sardines, canned fish, is a staple at a food bank. That's really important. So where was I with that? You're stuck. You're mostly then left with carbohydrates and fat, and some protein when it comes to things like the canned fish and canned meat. But carbs are not always bad. It just and we're not talking good or bad here. We just need to know that um, you want to choose more fiber and less sugar. So for someone going to the food bank, you can get a box of granola bars and some treats for the kids, but you want to look for some fiber items too. Cereals that have fiber in them, cereals that are offering 3 to 5 grams of fiber per serving would be helpful.
I have another another
Sure.
point to make kind of off of that, and then we'll move back onto the question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just as you're talking, I'm thinking of things, but something else that Bank on Belly started a while back, actually, one food bank that we work with in particular, is a prepackaged meal program. It kind of goes way back to things you were saying before as well about not having time, like other factors that might influence why individuals might not choose to eat healthy or be able to eat healthy,
Mm-hmm.
is like time, um, not having access to food. Maybe they might have physical barriers that are preventing them from being able to cook it, transportation issues, like all those things that you mentioned. So something that Bank on Bellies started at one food bank was a prepackaged meal program where we used either fresh food or canned food that could be found in the food bank,
Mm-hmm.
and then also use like other food that was donated. But to create, we made our first meal that we ever did was chili, and we used beans, as you said before, which is really important. And we had a certain amount of prepackaged meals set out there, put into the food bank, and people could take them home, put them in their freezers, and then after a long day of working, they could come home and have something quick and easy to make that was healthy. And it would have the
Great.
recipe on it, because as you said before, individuals might not know how to use the food.
Mm-hmm.
As you said with the beans and knowing how to just cook the beans. So having the recipe on it and how to use it, what the ingredients were, so when they go to the food bank, they can look for those items and understand how they could turn that into a meal themselves.
Amazing.
So I just thought maybe that would tie in kind of to what you were saying before.
I'm so happy to hear that. Is the recipe fairly simple?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Because simple is going to be simple.
Yeah.
Right? And then people will actually do it. If it's complicated, it takes too much time to even read it, right? It's going to be less likely that they're going to do that. But that's great. Is that still happening?
At that particular food bank, yes.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So there's freezers there that are obviously
Yes.
holding these foods
Yes.
that are prepackaged. Okay.
Yes.
And they're
And
made. They're already made?
They have individuals that come in to make community meals. So those have been starting to be packaged and put into the food bank so individuals can take those home. But they have schools come in sometimes and cook meals, and then they have the recipe on it, even if it's a sandwich, but things like that. And those get put out into the food bank, and people could take an actual meal home with them, not just like non-perishables.
Great. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Okay.
Cool.
Now we'll move on to...
And so one of the biggest issues right now with Canadians is, even though we don't rely on food banks, is the skyrocketing grocery prices. I don't know if we already kind of talked about this. Kind of the food collection and donation, some areas have decreased. So, like, prices have decreased, I guess. And what foods can people purchase that are inexpensive? So we're even going off of kind of what you said, like, even though a cereal box has increased in price, what would be maybe a better alternative for you to purchase that maybe you have seen that prices stay relatively the same?
Well, I would say, I mean, if you're an individual and your mission is to donate to a food bank, on a regular basis once a month, and you make that part of your budget as a consumer, as a regular individual, you want to pick up things as you go along when they're on sale. And those items on sale are going to be changing all of the time. But you're going to be adding, like, just like at the grocery store I go to, there's a Burlington food bank bin right there. So, you might get one item each time you come in and plop it in the food bank. So the food bank bin. So that's always an option, to pick up something that's on sale, which helps with the purchase of these items. If the question is then asking more about what would be priority, I think when it comes to this, yes, we can choose healthy food, but for some, it's not really just about healthy. It's about getting food in like, to begin with. So for some families, they just need their 5-year-old to eat a bowl of cereal. So we can't really be too picky when it comes to what we're going to donate, because there is room for all of it, because we do need to feed many different types of people. When it comes to this, like, we have, there's going to be kids that are just eating cereal for breakfast and nothing else. So, and cereal has gotten pricey. Yes, it has. But if you can find it when it's on sale and then donate that way, I wouldn't be purchasing high sugar cereals, anything that has chocolate or, really high sugar, maple syrup and Fruit Loops. And if you can choose the more brand-based cereals, this is going to be a better option. So things like, Raisin Bran or Bran Flakes, or Vector has some protein in it and some fiber. Special K is a good option and does have some protein in it. Shreddies is a good option. Corn Flakes is high in sugar, and a lot of these, like Honey Nut Cheerios, are quite high in sugar, but the regular yellow box Cheerios is a good option. Outside of cereal, which is a very popular item for families at a food bank because cereal is expensive, you might want to consider looking at your proteins next. So when it comes to the grocery store, again, buying things that are affordable would be like the canned fish. A can of sardines is $2. It's not expensive, maybe $2.49. A can of tuna and salmon get a bit more pricey. You could even, if you're a Costco shopper, you can buy a package of 6 and donate 1 to the food bank. Um, and then of course, the canned beans and legumes and pulses that we talked about, which are, not expensive. You get them on sale, and those are, that 1 can be put into a jar of tomatoes, and that can feed a family of 4, in terms of like getting in your vegetable, getting in some protein, some fiber, and then putting that on, a plate of pasta. You're getting a fairly decent meal there. um, So, sorry, I think I may have swayed away from the
No,
question.
oh, good. I was just going to add to your
Please
points that you
do.
were
Yeah.
definitely making there. Again, you just said sometimes it's about just actually feeding a mouth, and
Yeah.
like having a child who doesn't need to, like, doesn't
They don't need
eat.
to discern.
Yeah.
They just want to eat,
Eat.
right? Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, again, it's about the odd person here and there that doesn't always have the ability to eat everything in the food bank. And I, like, a lot of the times food banks do look for things, or items for people that do have diet restrictions. I know you're coming from a family of kind of disorders and chronic diseases that have happened. Having to change your meal has been definitely a big thing in your life, and kind of just maybe you speaking on that, and of somebody who is having food insecurity, and what maybe that your experience can maybe shed light on their experience as well. Just
Okay.
kind of.
So so you're asking if there was a condition in the family, how
Yeah.
would they choose differently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is how your choices kind of maybe can mirror theirs
Okay.
in changing your food diet, especially in a family
Right.
of.
Yeah.
4
They're
or 5.
likely going to be directed or guided by their doctor as to what choices they'll have. And it's really up to them then to find what's available at the food bank. And so, as far as I'm hearing, I think you guys are trying to educate your donators on what the best things are to donate. But as far as with any conditions, it's there would be a lot of different options based on whatever that condition is. If it's something like a lactose issue, then they would choose the non-dairy options. If it was an iron issue, and there was someone that had anemia in the family or a low iron, then they're going to choose things like a spinach, or like a frozen spinach, if there was some frozen spinach, or even prunes or dates. Dried fruits are a good source of iron. And you can't get meat or anything at a food bank. There might be something available at that packaged place, but meat is obviously the number one.
It's definitely on the most needed list. Meat, canned meat. Yes.
It's on the list.
Yeah.
It's definitely on the list. I mean, yeah, a lot of issues with health, and with people being, if they're carrying extra weight, is usually an indication that they're not getting enough protein and they're eating too many of other things like carbohydrates and fats. So if people were eating more protein, it would balance their plate. They would be less hungry for sugar and calories, carbohydrates.
And I don't know if you want to keep going, but I was just going to say, I know you mentioned the fitness firm doing some fundraisers or kind of some food drives, and maybe kind of you can just shed light on kind of your experience as a business, donating and kind of being in line with the Bank on Belly's mission.
Sure. I mean, this is really exciting, the Bank on Bellies. We have a chair yoga class that runs from September to June, and it runs on Thursdays. And this is a class that is a free class that we offer here at the club. However, your admission would be a food bank item. So most people bring any of these foods that we've talked about today, and we collect them all, and I take them over to the Burlington Food Bank. So that's our program that's starting next month, actually. And then I usually do a food drive sometime around Christmas time, and take that food over as well. It goes in line with everything that I'm doing here, and with feeding hungry families. It's an important thing, and it's not I mean, it is happening here in our neighborhoods. It's also worldwide. We also donate to the World Food Program as well. So
That's really amazing to hear. Thank you for all that you're doing for your community and the community around the world as well. That's really great to hear.
thank you.
It's also really coincidental, I guess. Bank on Bellies also has something called invitation donation that we do, where we'll reach out to different events, or even if someone's having a family gathering, they might choose to do this, but like admission to the event, or if they're coming over, they might ask their family, hey, instead of bringing like a cake or something as like a housewarming gift, do you mind bringing a donation? And it's just
Love
invitation
that.
donation. And I think that kind of ties in with your yoga class that you were mentioning. And I think that it's also great to kind of see or understand how donating also makes you feel good. Like it's kind of like you're helping someone else feel good by
Absolutely.
giving them something that they can fuel their body with, but it also makes your mind and body feel good to know that you're helping and that you're making a difference. And I think that kind of ties in with like even it being with a yoga class, that you're kind of fueling your mental health by giving and you're fueling your physical health by exercising. So I think that's also kind of a great way to tie it in. So I really love that program that you guys have started, and the fact that it's like continuous and that there's continuous donations occurring, just because that's also so important to make sure that there's consistency in food banks, that they also know when they're going to be receiving new donations, that because their clients are relying on them, and ensuring that their clients that are coming to them for stability can feel that stability by ensuring that their food bank shelves are always stocked as well. So I think that that's also really great what you're doing there.
Yeah, for sure. It's great.
Well,
Continue. I think it's wonderful what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
And you've been doing this since grade 6.
Yes.
Wow.
But I'm really happy to have my new executive team. We've been doing really great things and we're working on more. And this is one of them. So thank you so much for being our first guest speaker. We really appreciate
my pleasure.
you. If there's anything else that maybe you'd want to share before we say goodbye, if you have any final thoughts.
So I think I mean, if you've got all your questions answered, I think we've covered most of everything that's important for today.
So again, thank you, Kerri. And then for more information, or if you ever need any information for Bake on Bellies, you can definitely always ask us. But we have our website as well for more information. And yeah, we're starting so many new series, so don't be afraid to ask.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.